ever wonder what is the real story behind the adorable puppies you see for sale in pet store windows? An undercover investigator joins the show today to reveal what really happens at the breeding facilities that produce the puppies for sale in pet stores, and what really happens on the factory farms where animals get turned into your food. If you love dogs, or even if you just love food, this is a conversation you will not want to miss. Welcome to Puppies, Pandemics, and Public Health. I am Dr. Johnny Lieberman. If you've ever wondered how your everyday choices, including what you eat, what you buy, what you wear, and the medicines you take, impact your health, the health of your family, animals, and the planet, you are in the right place. Let's get to it. Pete Paxton is the Director of Investigations of SEED. He has done animal cruelty investigations since 2001, uncovering animal abuse at puppy mills, factory farms, slaughterhouses, commercial fishing boats, and pet stores. In many cases, Pete has worked undercover for weeks or months at a time. His work has been covered in the HBO documentaries Dealing Dogs and Death on a Factory Farm, and the National Geographic documentary Animal Undercover. He is a co-author of Rescue Dogs. Hello, welcome to another episode of Puppies, Pandemics, and Public Health. I'm Dr. Johnny Lieberman, and today I am pleased to welcome on the show Pete Paxton. Pete, thank you so much for taking out some time and joining me this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. I am excited.
Pete, let's give a little bit of background on what you do and maybe how you got here and how you're qualified to speak on some of these issues, to share this knowledge.
Sure. So I have done investigations for animal protection nonprofits since 2001. Half of my career has been focused on animal for food issues, largely factory farming, slaughter, some commercial fishing. The other half of my career is dogs. I have documented well over 1,000 puppy mills by now. I have worked undercover at several of the largest puppy mills that there are in the US and seen a couple of them shut down from the crimes that they were committing. I have worked undercover at a pet store and then, of course, gone undercover into well over 100 or so pet stores by now across the US. That puppy mill work, I typically do that for two groups: the Companion Animal Protection Society and Humane World. And Humane World, I do a variety of things for them on the puppy mills and pet stores. For the Companion Animal Protection Society, or CAPS, I go to pet stores. And this might be a place where people are considering passing a law that would stop those stores from selling puppies and kittens from breeders. And I will walk in and I'm wearing a covert camera and microphone. I'm recording it. I'm like, hey, you got a lot of puppies here. Can you tell me where they come from? I want to make sure they don't come from puppy mills. Do you know about the breeders? And I listen to what they say. Then I go document the actual breeders that supply them and show how completely different it is from what they said. Other work that I've done, though, has been documenting unlicensed breeders or licensed breeders that just sell out the door. I've been to places that are like, yeah, come on over. We'll show you what our place is like, give you a full tour, go right ahead. And so I've had all of that experience from A to Z with the dog breeding industry. And that's kind of led to the mentality that I have now on how to fight it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Pete. I think that gives me, as well as our listeners, a great understanding that when you're going to talk about any of this, you know what you're talking about. Unlike me, who has read a lot and spoken with a lot of people, I have not been inside a puppy mill. I've been in a handful of pet stores. I've done a lot of research, but you are on here for this experience you've had. I think you can share it with our listeners and hopefully teach a lot of our listeners something important where they can really make a difference with the choices they make.
It's easy for people to do that. They have that opportunity all the time. There's a book I wrote with a couple authors, Gene Stone and Nick Bromley, back in 2019 called Rescue Dogs. And I outline some of the undercover work that I've done to explain the problem, but then we also explain the solution. There's a whole section of the book where we thought, okay, how do we outline everything that you can do that's going to help dogs and to help any kind of a skeptic understand that adoption and volunteering, fostering, that's the solution versus anything else. I've done animal ag stuff and puppy mill stuff, but I've also done investigations of hunting and animals and entertainment and, just a variety of things. And the thing about puppy mill issue is that it's so easy to be part of the solution. It's so easy to not contribute to the puppy mill industry and to help fight.
Thanks for leading with that, Pete. So let's talk about the connection between retail pet stores selling puppies and puppy mills or other places that would be a likely source to buy a dog that came from a puppy mill. That might be a starting point before we get into the multiple advantages of rescuing a dog. Why is going to a pet store when you are looking for a new dog or going online, why is that wrong? Why is that not the best thing for bringing a new dog into your family? But what's going on that's behind the scenes that you've seen?
Pet stores, they buy from puppy mills, period. And a lot of places that you buy from online, I mean, it's exactly the same. So let's take Petland. There's a lot of pet stores doing this, but take Petland. That would be like a prime example. Walk in. And one of the things you might notice first is the sticker shock, right? That you're talking puppies that are like $4,000 to $9,000, right? But it's clean. There's literally going to be a wall of dogs. And they're playful and they got toys and you could take anyone that you want. You could play with them in the little playroom. And then you're going to look up and there's these big TV screens up above you. And it shows footage of dogs and puppies running through grassy yards and playing. And they show kennels too, but it'll be these long kennel runs and it's perfectly clean. And you're going to think, wow, that's excellent. If you ask about it, they'll be like, yeah, here's the names of breeders. Look how big these places are. They got heated floorings. The dogs are let out every day and they can all play. And then they offer you financing and they offer you a health guarantee. I've worked undercover at a pet land, so I know how this works. Like I would, and I still feel terrible about this to this day. That's what I had to do. People would walk in just to look at a puppy and they would walk out the door with a puppy that like they had no intention of buying. They just wanted to look at it because you get commission for that. So you work everything you can to sell that puppy.
I'm going to ask you to pause right there.
Sure.
You said this as a fact. I understand it as a fact because it sounds like you're going to go into what goes on at a typical puppy mill, which I really need the audience to hear.
Yeah.
But I want to drive home the point. You said puppies from pet stores come from puppy mills, fact.
Yeah.
So I want to just drive that home to our listeners. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, no matter what they're telling you in a pet store, no matter what images you're seeing, no matter what a salesperson would say, we don't source from puppy mills. We get all our dogs from reputable, responsible breeders. Whatever line they're telling you, it is not true.
Yeah.
The dogs in pet stores come from horrific, disgusting conditions. And when you decide to shell out $7,000 plus maybe another $5,000 or $6,000 in finance charges, as Pete is getting at over the course of the life of the dog, that this is the industry that you're supporting. And as we're going to get to, listen around for the end of the show, you have other options where you could spend much less, get a dog that's probably going to be healthier, and not support this vile industry. So, Pete, is that the norm for the dogs that get sourced into pet stores? This lack of appropriate care, wire cages, maybe in their own filth? What is that? Is this the norm when you get a dog, or if you're looking at a dog from a pet store? Or is this just a handful of places and most of them are actually coming in healthy and well cared for? What's the norm?
Yeah. So the norm is you're going to see dogs either in wire cages. A lot of breeders prefer wire because then their poop falls through and they don't have to clean as much. If they have that kind of setup, that's typically called the sundowner cage. Is a type of brand that's most common for making that. They'll have the plastic sheet underneath that first row to prevent that. And they'll poop on top of that. And then they'll have like a little PVC pipe that comes out that water runs through so they can just stick a hose to it and then they'll just spray it. Or they'll have a single row of cages and then the poop falls down in there and then they may or may not clean that for weeks or months. Other times, dogs will be on concrete runs or they'll be on dirt or rock. And you may, depending on the day you're there, you may or may not see that as clean. May have just cleaned it. They may not have cleaned it for a week or two. But when you see a place where there's dogs in cages and they're fully matted and they're spinning and there's poop piled up on the cage wire, you know that's a puppy mill. Or you see, like I saw recently, a guy had these long concrete runs, but it was so much feces that had been rained on. It was mashed onto the flooring. There was literally nowhere for them to step without being in their own manure. I know that's a puppy mill. And these dogs, they don't act like dogs at all. They act like statues. They just stand there. They don't respond to being petted. They don't respond to movement around them. They don't know what to do if you put a toy in front of them. Like they don't know how to behave in any situation. They're just very heavily broken. They need a lot of rehabilitation. So yeah, that is perfectly normal for puppy mills.
Yeah. Thanks. Just want to drive that home to the listeners. Despite all this, if you're still thinking about going to a pet store to buy a puppy, I want you to remember what Pete described, the conditions that these dogs are raised in, the filth, the lack of care, the lack of human contact, many of the things that we take for granted for the dogs that we bring into our family. I would think that most of the listeners, most of the public looking at bringing a new dog into their family would rather support a business or support a model where the dogs are cared for, where the dogs are given love, just like the love you're going to get, and not support a business model that really sounds like they're just in it purely for the profit. From the mill to the broker to the pet store, it sounds like it's just about profit, not about connecting healthy dogs with families who want them, to increase that bond, that loving bond that we all know about, anyone who's had a dog or a cat or any pet for that matter. But Pete, thanks for bringing all that up. I wanted to drive home that point as to what, when you buy a dog for 6 or 7 grand from a pet store, this is what you're getting. This is what you're
Yeah.
starting with. And this is the industry you're supporting. And they will often say, or sometimes even advertise, we only buy from USDA licensed breeders. Now that sounds really good, right? On the surface, sounds really good. But Pete, I think, may have a different story as to what does that really mean? What does that guarantee if the puppy you're buying came from a USDA licensed breeder?
I've worked at a puppy mill where the puppy miller said on tape, listen, this inspector's going to come, because the inspector let her know she was going to show up, let the breeder know, gave her a heads up. And she's like, she's going to show up tomorrow. So we have all these puppy cages. The puppy's legs are falling through the wire. And they would do that because they didn't want to have to bother to put down these little plastic mats because then you have to clean them. And she was like, so we're going to put those mats down. And the moment the inspector's gone, we're going to pull them up.
So I wanted to transition to, why is adopting one of the answers? I mean, you don't have to convince me because I was not there before. I was in this mindset of I want a golden retriever and damn it, I'm going to go find myself a golden retriever. And you have to find a breeder to do that. A lot of the time, you can still get purebreds in shelters sometimes, no question, but it's part of our culture is the way I see it. I want a Dalmatian. I want a German Shepherd. I want a Collie. I want a golden retriever, whatever it is. I want a Chihuahua. I'm convinced I have a wonderful rescue dog that changed my life and there's no going back for me. But Pete, what's your side? Why is adopting a dog an important part of this puzzle and fixing it?
You know, there's dogs that are being killed in shelters across the country every day. And if there's always opportunities to save their lives. So there's that basic element. Now, sometimes you might find some smaller shelter and they're not overcrowded, but a lot of them have to then start pulling from larger shelters in nearby cities because those shelters are always overcrowded. So, first of all, you save a life. But secondly, you're going to have a better pet.
I feel like there's a perception that kind of what you led that with is true, that it's the opposite, that I want a healthy dog. I want a dog that's comes from a USDA facility. I want a dog that's going to be good for my family. I'm going to go with a purebred and from that they don't know is from a puppy mill. And I want to emphasize the opposite is true. If you adopt from a shelter or from a rescue that's been with a family, you're going to know so much more information about the dog, regardless of those scenarios. I volunteered at a shelter. I've worked with and cared for dogs, and I've also adopted from a shelter. And the shelter workers know. You say, oh, if you're someone who likes to run 6 miles a day and you want a dog, that kind of companion, they can tell you that. Or if you're someone who doesn't do that and want a couch potato kind of dog, the shelter workers, as did I from caring for these animals over and over, they're going to know that. They're going to know the dogs that are going to jump up and be playful and the dogs that just want to roll over and have their belly rubbed. They have their personalities, and finding an animal that fits with your lifestyle, your needs, what's good for your family, your kids, that's all important for the dog and yourself. And you get so much more of that information, not to mention they've they're up to date on their shots. They've gotten the veterinary care that they need. There's probably not going to be any, at least unknown health issues that you're dealing with. And behaviorally, you're starting from a much better place. In the shelters, I can tell you because I've seen it, the dogs that have behavioral issues, they get worked on. They get trained to try and break their fear of being alone, their fear of humans, their aggressive nature that came from whatever their prior unfortunate scenario was. They have a dedicated team at these shelters working to make these dogs happier, more confident, more friendly, ultimately more adoptable, but they're going to be a better fit for any family. When you have this dedicated staff, that's their goal. Healthy dogs with humans, not driven by profit, which is the other side. They want to turn these puppies into profit as quickly as possible. Whereas in the shelter and rescue environment, it's a completely different mindset. They care about the dog. And that's what you're getting. You're getting a dog who had this care, had this love, had this appropriate veterinary care, better nutrition. All that happened before you get the dog. What do you think is going to give you the highest probability of having a happy relationship with that dog? And what can you feel most confident about that you're supporting? You're supporting this whole behind the scenes industry dedicated to the dog. Does that sound more like something that you want to support, where you want to spend your hard earned dollars? Or do you want to support the puppy mill industry and go to a pet store? The contrast is stark, and I wanted to highlight it because I didn't realize that as recently as a handful of years ago. I was under the impression that the highest chance of getting a healthy, well-bred dog was getting purebred from either a pet store or a local, small, responsible breeder. And anecdotally, I can also say I had a neighbor living in Colorado who bought two dogs in a row, golden retrievers from a supposed reputable breeder. And both of them passed away at age 5 or 6. I don't know all the details, but presumably poor genetics. And now that could happen with any dog, but this is a common theme. And they probably paid a lot of money for that dog, not as much as a pet store, but way more than in a shelter. And they loved their dog and they cared for it. And I met both of these dogs and they were adorable, loving golden retrievers, but there's no more of a health guarantee or a behavior guarantee buying from a USDA licensed breeder, buying from a pet store, buying from a puppy mill than going to a rescue or a shelter. I wanted to drive that point home. I was under that disillusion for a long time. I'm not anymore. So, Pete, thanks for bringing those points up. We're getting close to the closing, Pete. So I wanted to allow you some time. If you want to drive home, kind of the most important point, or well, actually, I'll give you more than one this time. A couple of points. What can our listeners, I think you've gotten a good sense, but I want to arm you with the information that Pete has kindly shared and give you a few take home points, how you can make a difference when it's time for you to find another dog for your family. Pete, drive it home again. What can our listeners do when it comes to be that time?
Yeah. I would say that your best bet is if you can find a foster based rescue, then you are most likely to find the dog with a personality that is going to be best suited for your family. Also, if your specific thing is that you're looking for a dog with a certain personality because you have kids or you have a cat or another dog, I can't stress this enough. Don't buy in to the hype of, well, then this is the breed that you need. I have worked as a veterinary assistant at a no-kill shelter. I have volunteered at shelters. I have worked with dogs for my whole career. It's just not true. I understand that there's certain stereotypes and I understand that, like, for some reasons, like golden retrievers tend to be friendly, and I get that, but you will meet mean dogs of any breed. You will meet nice dogs of any breed. So focus more on wanting the specific personality, not the size, not the color, not the breed of the dog. The only other thing that I would say is if you're someone who's like, well, I know, but maybe I could help out my friend who breeds, or I hear you, but I still would like to breed because my dogs have good personalities. The only thing that I could finally say about that is that if you really love dogs, you don't profit off of them, you rescue them. And to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, you have to realize that if you don't have a problem with a shelter at your local community, the shelter in the next one does. And there's always a dog that literally is going to die tomorrow at a shelter nearby. You can always go save a life. And that problem, we are trying to fight that by fighting the puppy mill industry. The need to adopt has never been great.
No, thank you, Pete. I emphasize that adopt. So adopter or get from responsible breeder, Pete talked about before. I have also just seen very simple, adopt, don't shop. And
Yeah.
so many good reasons to do it. It's better for your finances, better for your pocketbook, and supporting an industry that actually has an interest in the dogs. You get a higher probability of getting a healthier dog and knowing about the dog that's going to work well for your family. There's so many reasons to do it. And I think it's literally hundreds of thousands of dogs, cats are euthanized every year in this country because nobody wants them, not because of any other reason. You could contribute to that problem, adopt a homeless dog in a shelter. Pete, that was all fantastic. Do you want to share anything more about you, the organization you're with, or anything else you want to ask of our listening audience?
Yeah, I am the director of investigations of SEED, Strategies for Ethical and Environmental Development. You can see us on ethicalstrategies.org, see the kind of investigations we do. We investigate animal cruelty investigations, largely focusing on animal ag. We also work with litigators to sue factory farms that pollute waterways. And for my puppy mill investigations, it's for Humane World. You can go to, I think it's just humaneworld.org and then caps-web.org for the Companion Animal Protection Society. So all this stuff that I said, in case you're like, where is that? Man, there's videos. There's videos out there, and CAPS tends to make lots and lots of them. They have a huge ammo stockpile of videos of all this evidence.
That's great, Pete. And thanks for all the work you do. It's invaluable for helping get some justice for the injustices in the system and the animals that are suffering. A lot of it could not be done without your work. Heartfelt thank you for the difficult work that you're doing to help as part of this fight. Oh, thanks. Thanks for all that. Thank you, Pete, for your time, for sharing your insights and thoughts on this. I hope you obtain some valuable information from the show, and that if and when it's time for you to look for another dog, adding a dog to your family, hope you're going to consider adoption and look into it. There's so much information out there. Thank you. Thanks for listening. These conversations aren't always easy, but they're important and worth having. Take what resonates, ask questions, and keep learning. Find us on Doctor Podcast Network. content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice nor legal advice, and it cannot replace professional consultation with your doctor, lawyer, or other licensed expert. Always seek guidance that's specific to your situation.